cigarettes.
The New South Wales state government must be wondering whether its tough new firearm restrictions have been worth it. Many people claim there will be an electoral backlash in the upcoming election and that the effects of the restrictions are dubious. But Police Minister George Petullo, who was in Kurri yesterday, still strongly believes in the legislation. He met a deputation from the gun lobby and says he was able to clear up some misconceptions. Mr Petullo is adamant that the legislation will save lives.
They've been angry because they have been misinformed about the reasons for the government deciding to tighten gun laws, and there was a feeling that it was aimed at responsible shooters. It hasn't been aimed at responsible shooters, but at those elements which have brought responsible shooters into disrepute in the general community. There's no question that in the longer term the laws will be effective, because most murder occurs in a domestic or neighbourhood situation because there's a gun available. What we are seeking to achieve is not to have that gun available for which the owner has no legitimate purpose for.
Chapman Meats set up this research and development facility at the old Newcastle abattoir site in the Warrabrook estate. The natural lean process involves the deboning and mincing of meat before it's treated. Although the process is a closely guarded secret, it involves making the fat and cholesterol insoluble. The protein remains soluble. The process separates these components to the point where 96% of the fat is removed and cholesterol is reduced by 30%.
It is an irrefutable fact that heart disease and arterial disease are associated with the consumption of fat from animals and from poultry, and that if one could remove this, that the incidence of heart disease and arterial disease would decrease.
This prototype factory has been established by Chapman Meats in the former Newcastle abattoir complex and represents an investment of $10 million and 15 years of study by the inventor of the process, Dallas Chapman, a fifth-generation Newcastle butcher.
The real motivation behind it was that my father died when he was 48 of heart disease. My uncles are all similar ages, and I thought, well then, it was all put down to atherosclerosis, and so I thought, well, from there on we got to do something about it, as well as the fact that the meat industry has been a sagging meat industry, red meat industry.
Are you excited about the export prospects of this particular product?
Terribly excited at the moment. We've just come back from America, and we have quite a lot of things in the pipeline at the moment, and next week we'll be in Japan again.
The process will be marketed in much the same way as NutraSweet, the sugar substitute. The company expects to sign special license arrangements with a major meat processor and chicken producer within the next 2 months, and then start exporting by the middle of this year. Meantime, continuing research is applying the process to other food proteins, such as turkey and even fish. For the last 4 months, this special test kitchen has been experimenting with natural lean processed meat, and they've come up with all sorts of ways to cook it: burgers, kebabs, meatloaf, and even the humble meatball. Tastes good. And with the value of the Australian processed meat market now at $950 million a year, many of the Newcastle-based shareholders are hoping this breakthrough will start to pay some handsome dividends.
There's a lot of Newcastle people who've backed me all the way through, and I'd like to see them get some sort of return on their money for it, and I'm damn sure they will after last week, yeah.
The Real Estate Institute says the housing crisis which extends to Newcastle isn't being recognised by the government or the opposition. Institute President Robert Bevan says Newcastle's rental vacancy rates are less than 1% and says there have been few new buildings for rental accommodation in the past 10 years because of a massive disincentive provided by land tax and stamp duty. He says in the 10 years, stamp duty has increased by an average 17.6% a year throughout New South Wales.
If we look at first home buyers for a start, they're in Newcastle on a $65,000 property, have to pay another $1,000 to purchase there. For those that would seek to rent, there's been no new housing stock, rental housing stock, created over the last 10 years. Stamp duty and land tax provide a massive disincentive. The government must do something about it, and the opposition must come out with some constructive policies.
The Institute's recent analysis of property tax increases shows land tax revenue derived by the state government has risen an average 12.4% per year. Until now, Mr Bevan says this information has been hidden in Finance Department figures. Of course, there is an election just around the corner. Is it purely coincidental that these figures have just come out?
No. The Real Estate Institute has been conducting a non-party political election campaign for the last 18 months. Many people will remember our stand on negative gearing, but it's obviously because there's an election on. We're asking both parties to come forward with their housing policies.
He says the Institute wants stamp duty abolished for first home buyers and says land tax should be put on a sliding scale from no tax for the first 3 years to the full amount payable in the 6th year. He says if current trends continue, we can expect an increasing problem with the homeless. Mr Bevan says tax increases at their current rate mean by 1992, property owners will face exorbitant stamp duty costs, continuing to rise at twice the rate of the Consumer Price Index. Presently, he says, the average price for a 3-bedroom brick veneer home is $65,000 at Hamilton and $95,000 at Merewether.
About 8:25, 4 men dressed in navy clothes like railway employees arriving for work swept into the Loco yard car park in a silver Falcon, just as an SRA security van was delivering the yard's payroll. Shocked staff saw 3 men, balaclavas over their heads, leap from the car brandishing guns. 2 of the robbers followed the 2 payroll guards into the office, hit one on the head with a gun and snatched 2 suitcases, one containing about $200,000 in cash. Some railway staff members at the Loco yards did see the robbery happen, but it happened so quickly that there was little anyone could do. And in any case, one of the robbers was standing at the front of the building with a shotgun. A pretty good disincentive to any foolish bravery. In seconds, the bandits were back in their car and gone. The injured guard was taken to hospital but later released. Police swooped on the area and about 5 minutes later found the getaway car, a silver Falcon stolen yesterday on the Central Coast. It was abandoned in a lane off Greta Road, New Lambton. Its engine was still running, but there was no sign of the robbers, who'd apparently escaped in another car or cars. Using the Westpac helicopter, police also searched surrounding streets, but spotted nothing. The 2 cases snatched were a black Globite case like this, containing only papers, and a standard SRA payroll case, a wooden case. Police say the robbery was clearly well planned. The SRA is about to change over to an electronic money transfer system, which will remove the need for cash deliveries. The crime also bore a resemblance to the payroll snatch at the Awabba State mine about 18 months ago. In that case, 4 armed men were dressed in typical Electricity Commission work clothes.
Walked off or had another car pick them up.
When the $4.5 million regional museum opens later this month, visitors will be able to see a masterpiece at work. Under the eye of Catherine Grushka, the first stage of the project is now being displayed in the museum's foyer, a collection of prints that will soon become 28 small tapestries. The second stage was the spinning and dyeing of 12 fleeces into 16 kilograms of yarn by members of the Newcastle Spinners and Weavers Guild. According to its coordinator, the project, boosted by a grant of $22,000, will take 9 months to complete. The concept is described as a living exhibition.
From now on, when the museum is open, we will actually be weaving here on site, and there will be some spinning going on, and you'll see us up the scaffolding here, working on the wall. It's a combination of ideas because of the historical content as well as the general impact of the valley as a scene, and On the left-hand side, it starts from early settlement and goes to present-day settlement.
Overworked and underpaid, or out of work and out of luck, was the paper presented by Deirdre Wicks, Senior Lecturer with the Hunter Institute of Higher Education in the Department of Social Health and Welfare. She says that statistics show 43.5% of working women in the Hunter are in the lowest wage bracket, earning less than $159 per week, and there are none in the highest bracket earning more than $640. Figures show that only 20% of women are on the average weekly wage of their male counterparts. A small percent earn more, while the highest percent earn less.
Well, from my research, I must say I'm quite stunned at the low amounts that women in the Hunter are paid. I've done a comparison between the New South Wales average and the average for women in the Hunter, and it's quite obvious from the figures that women in the Hunter are actually congregated at the lowest end of the salary scale.
Next Tuesday, women across the world will celebrate International Women's Day, marking milestones on the road to equality. But describing her latest findings as appalling, Ms Wick says some women in the Hunter's workforce may have little to be joyous about.
There's 57% of the female workforce in this region are undertaking part-time work. Now, we don't know if they're choosing that or that's because that is the only work that is available, because that's the area of the highest growth in the workforce at the moment, is female part-time work.
Story of a woman who flew all the way from England to Newcastle to be a kidney donor. Danuta Stevens took the brave step to give her mother extra years of life.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
It's 20 years ago since Danuta Stevens of Newcastle set out on a holiday to England. On board the ship, she met her husband and settled in Rochester in Kent. But Danuta has returned to Australia on a special mission. Her mother suffered from kidney failure last July and since then has been on dialysis. So Danuta came back to Newcastle to donate one of her own kidneys to her mother. For her, it was the possibility of giving her mother an extra 15 to 20 years of quality life that made her overcome the fear of being a donor.
I was very worried at first, frightened I suppose, but I did talk to a lot of people. I was surprised, the few people, I knew a few people that have only, lived on one kidney. It would give my mother a good 20 years of good living, because she's always been an active person. The way she was now, she just couldn't do anything. She wouldn't have no holidays, she couldn't work in the garden, things that she liked doing, she couldn't do.
Today, a still shaky Danuta Stevens was wheeled down to the transplant room where her mother is recovering. Although she was not able to go inside the isolation room, she was able to communicate with her mother through the glass. For Danuta, it was a fantastic experience to see her mother looking so well after such major surgery.
But everything's gone very well. Yeah, you were up before me. You were walking before I was.
This election, more than any other, has seen a proliferation of independents. All seem to be campaigning hard on the issue of Newcastle's neglect under the ALP, and all say they'll be able to achieve much more if they get our votes in the ballot box. According to independent candidate George Keegan, he can achieve as much change for Newcastle as Frank Arkell has for Wollongong if given half a chance.
It's no problem at all. All you've got to do is look at what happened in Wollongong with them down there. They were able to shake the complacency 4 years ago when they put Doug Arkell in. They've now got $1.5 billion worth of growth and expansion going on down there, which is job creating. We've got none. Now, if I can achieve half of what Doug Arkell has done in Wollongong as an independent, which I'm sure I can, we'll be okay. We'll do it the same way. We'll get out and put pressure on, we'll encourage it, and we'll try and get the government to see what we're all about.
And he's not the only one to use the analogy. Margaret Henry, who's also contesting the seat of Newcastle as an independent, claims she too would turn back the rot. She says Newcastle has basically been taken for granted.
It's been assumed we'll always vote the same way, no matter what they do or what they don't do. What I'd be doing is looking at whichever party is in power, I'd be looking at those policies, measuring them against the policies that I've very carefully developed over the years. Sometimes I would be supporting Labor if their policies were ones I could believe in, but I'd be looking closely at Liberal policies. I'd also be looking at some of the very good ideas that people like Ted Mack and John Hatton have about the reform of local government.
Today also saw the Democrat flag being flown in Newcastle. Democrat in the Legislative Council, Elizabeth Kirby, was re-stressing that old Democrat theme of keeping the bastards honest. She says each piece of legislation will be scrutinised on its merits and is confident that the Democrats will hold the balance of power after the election.
Well, it's conceded that it's very unlikely that this time the Labour Party will get more than 6 members elected to the upper house, and that would bring their numbers up to 21. It's likely that the Liberal Party, Liberal National Party, will get 7, and that would bring their numbers up to 18. It's also conceded that Mrs Nile will join the Reverend Fred Nile and Murray Bignell with the call to Australia, but they will nearly always vote conservatively with the Liberal National Party, bringing their numbers up to 21. So you get 21-21, and that means that myself and Richard Jones, who is our #1 candidate, will be in that tie-breaking position.
At this stage of the season, Canberra has won 2 of its 3 games, while Newcastle has 2 wins from 4. The Falcons are currently in 7th place on the NBL table after winning 1 from 2 on the road last weekend.
Well, it would have been nice to have got 2 wins out of it, but I think you're always happy with a win on the road, so the fact that we got a split out of it was a good start.
The match against Canberra, how do you see that going?
Well, we haven't been able to beat Canberra for 3 or 4 seasons now, so this is a big step forward for us again. They're a team that's been in the finals every year for 5 or 6 years, and one of the teams that we've got to be able to move past if we're going to be a legitimate threat. So I think we'll do well.
Besides it's going to be a hard physical game, there'll be some personal clashes.
Yeah, Jerry Everett and Phil Smythe should be a tremendous contest, and the 2 7-footers, Willie Simmons and Derek Polk. I think Derek can outplay Willie again, and if he does, then that gives us a big springboard to win.
2 wins from 4 at this stage. You'd be really looking for a win this weekend.
Yeah, I think we desperately want to win 3 from the next 4, hopefully 4 in a row, but if we could win 3 of the next 4, we'll probably find ourselves in a nice position after the first 8 games. So yeah, it's vital that we get a good game under our belt.
Following last weekend's charge to the Challenge Cup against defending champions Manly, the Newcastle Knights are preparing for another battle, the first bout of the Winfield Cup against the Parramatta Eels. Defeating the Sea Eagles was a feather in the caps of the first-grade reserves and under-21 sides, but coach Alan McMahon says the premiership battle will be the real test for the newly formed side. Giving no secrets away, the game plan has been set for this weekend's showdown.
Well, there'll be a few bases there in regards to the foundations that were there, but there's a few players that might be a bit different. Our forwards are quite strong, as you say, but I would like to think too that our backs are pretty sharp and pretty smart. But, you know, we're trying to encourage that and nurse that along as well.
Although absent from last night's training, former Cronulla halfback Paul Kennedy will shine his armour after signing up with the team this week.
We considered that there was some reserve strength needed for that reserve half 5'8" type area, and he made overtures to us that he'd like to come and play for the Knights, so he laid the bait, we went and ran with it.
Last weekend's crowd at the International Sports Centre reached more than 21,000. At least 10,000 more spectators are expected tomorrow when the Knights and the Eels do battle. Although the underdogs, the Knights know they'll be the home crowd favourite and are prepared to fight for the honour. Do you think you'll win the supporters over?
Well, you just can't legislate their belief, can you? You know, you've got to earn that. And I think the guys earned it last week. They must continue the same work, make the field feel, you know, that they can relate to this football team, because in fact it's Newcastle. So if they earn their particular respect and their applause, well, I'm sure the people will give it to them. You go in there with the determining factor that you can win. So we'll go in there with the factor that, yeah, that we can win it.
Chito is just one of the many styles of karate that is sweeping across Australia in popularity. This weekend's national championships will match the self-defence skills of both junior and senior competitors, including defending open fighting and kata champion Brian Hayes and current New South Wales All-Stars champion 17-year-old Charlene Machin. The sport has gathered a strong following in the Newcastle area, with local students expected to take out most titles in all divisions.
Well, we're probably only looking at about 150, 200 people coming from the other dojos. It's quite a way to travel. As far as Newcastle's chances, we've won quite a few titles in the last few years. We seem to have a mortgage on the women's title, thanks to our young student Charlene Machin. I've done well in the Opens. I've won the Open Fighting and the Open Kata 3 years in a row, so on the major titles we have a very good chance. We also have a very large group of under-10s, under-12s who I think will perform very well, judging on their past performances both in the Hunter Valley Open and other tournaments.
And this weekend the local competitors will have to try hard for selection in the Australian team for the world titles, which is a first.
That's right. We're holding our, well, it's the first time in Australia we'll participate in the World Chitteroo Championships, which will be held in Vancouver next year in Canada. And yes, the students who perform well here will, I think, get a good gateway into selection for the team.
Best-selling author Stephen King's horror novel and blockbusting movie Carrie is about to become a stage musical. Already the critics are expressing doubts, but is that because the horror musical is being produced by Britain's acclaimed Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company?
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
It's 33 degrees, 26 minutes and 30 seconds south.
Good afternoon, I'm Ross Hampton. On the 9th of June 1789, Captain Hunter gave that latitude reading to Governor Arthur Phillip at the northernmost point of their exploratory voyage up Broken Bay. Today, Gosford celebrated the Bicentenary with a reenactment.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.